Majnanatimidandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukhaṁ karoti vāchalam pangum langhayate girim yatkripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupapadama Bhakti Swapadantikam Mancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Vyayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Welcome everyone, and good whatever time of day it might be for you there, wherever you are. I have Padmanabha Maharaj asked me to speak this month on the 4 Vaiṣṇava Sampradāyas. So I'm calling the presentation 4 Vaiṣṇava Sampradāyas, a brief introduction to the schools of Bhakti. And in an hour or so, I think that, okay, wait, hold on a second. I seem to have killed Bhakti Prema's mic. I'm not sure how to fix that. Okay, cool. I guess when I muted all, somehow or other it muted you too, and that seems like a bug to me. So I think the best we can do in an hour or so is a very cursory look at the Sampradāyas, the different channels of divine dispensation provided by the Lord for the conditioned souls, just so that we can get a sense of our kinship with the different Sampradāyas. So I want to start by looking at the Kumāra Sampradāya, or Nimbarka Sampradāya, as it's sometimes called. But first, I want to do a quick overview of all 4 Sampradāyas. So we have the Kumāra Sampradāya, which is also known as Nimbarka Sampradāya, Nimbaditya Sampradāya, Saranagati Sampradāya, and Hamsa Sampradāya. And we'll come back to the reasons for that in a couple of minutes. And then there's the Sampradāya coming from Shiva, generally known as the Rudra Sampradāya, but also known as the Vishnu Swami Sampradāya, and in modern times, probably most active as the Vallabha Sampradāya, or the Pushti Marg. The Acharya, foundational Acharya for the Rudra Sampradāya, is Vishnu Swami. His Vedanta commentary is called Sarvagya Bhashya, and the Tattva, the philosophy he teaches, is Shuddha Dvaitavada, purified monism. So it's a monism that's not like the monism that's taught by the Advaitins. I forgot to cover these things for Nimbarka. Nimbarka Acharya is the foundational Acharya for the Kumāra Sampradāya. His Vedanta commentary is called Vedanta Parijata Sarvabhashya. His philosophy, his tattva, is Dvaita Advaitava, Dvaita Advaita, monism and dualism, or sometimes referred to as dualistic monism. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Then we have the Sampradāya coming from Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, generally known as the Sri Sampradāya or Ramanuja Sampradāya, because its foundational acharya is Ramanuja Acharya. His commentary on the Vedanta Sutra is called the Sri Bhashya, because he is a devotee of Sri, or Lakshmi, of course, and his philosophy is called Vishishtadvaitavad. It's a specific monism. We'll talk more about that. In a couple of weeks. And then we have the Sampradāya coming from Brahma, generally referred to as the Brahma Sampradāya or the Madhva Sampradāya, because the foundational acharya is Madhvacharya. And his Vedanta commentary is called the Purna Pragya Bhashya, because his name was Purna Pragya before being given the name Madhva. And more recently, the Madhva Sampradāya, by its connection, which we'll discuss later at the end of the month, by its connection with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his Sampradāya, the Madhva Sampradāya has been kind of refreshed by Baladev Vidyabhushana's Govinda Bhashya, which we'll talk a little bit about at the end of the month. The foundational acharya is Madhvacharya. His philosophy is it's a purified dualism. It's not a strict dualism. He calls it Shuddha Dvaitavad. It's not a dualism that says there is spirit and there is matter, and they don't have anything necessarily to do with each other. We see that kind of dualism in many of the lines of Christian thought and other religious thought nowadays. You've got the secular and the profane, and never the twain shall meet. So, but his dualism isn't like that at all. It's a purified dualism. And we kind of see a great commonality among the tattvas taught by these different acharyas, and the differences are often quite subtle. And then since Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that philosophy has been not replaced, but again maybe refreshed or enhanced by the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Vedavad, or Achintya Bheda Veda Tattva. Achintya Bheda Abheda. Veda, difference, and Abheda, non-difference. The teaching that spirit and matter, that everything is identical with the absolute truth, at the same time that he remains aloof from these things. And now, generally devotees think of this as something perhaps fashioned by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but if we study the Bhagavatam carefully, we see that actually this is the oldest of teachings, because we in the Bhagavatam, in the second canto, we see this philosophy taught most specifically in the chapter called Purusha Sukta Confirmed. And just by its reference to the Purusha Sukta prayers of the Rig Veda, this means this is actually the original teaching of the Vedas, because what the Purusha Sukta prayers teach, and what that what that entire second canto demonstrate, is that at the same time, everything is Krishna, while Krishna remains aloof. So there is a simultaneous one and difference that's effected by Krishna's inconceivable energies. As Swami Tripurari frequently points out, it's not that it's inconceivable that they're one and different, because the other philosophies also acknowledge that. That's at the core of their perspectives, but that this is affected by his inconceivable energies. So that's a quick look. Minimize these to read my slide. I have a couple of quotations that help us understand a little bit about the perspective of Vaishnavas on the four Sampradāyas through which we approach the Lord. This is from the Garga Samhita. I don't remember the context of who's speaking. Vamana, Brahma, Ananta Shesh, and Sanaka Kumāra will appear as Brahmanas by the order of Vishnu for the preservation of eternal righteousness in Kali Yuga. Vishnu Swami, Madhvacharya, Ramanuja, and Nimbaditya will appear respectively as a portion of Vamana, Brahma, Ananta Shesh, and Sanaka Kumāra. These four saviors will be the establishers of four authorized and empowered spiritual channels of disciplic succession in the period calculated from the reign of King Vikrama in 54 BC, subsequently through the 432,000-year cycle of Kali Yuga. These four authorized and empowered spiritual channels of disciplic succession are to be fully accepted by all beings, as any word, combination of words, or formulation of sound frequencies invoked or addressed, audible or inaudible, secret or revealed, ancient or contemporary, outside their auspices, have absolutely no efficacy. So that also calls to mind the Sampradāya Vihina verse, that no mantra that's not received through the channel of disciplic succession. And these channels are established by the order of the Lord himself, that no mantra can have any real efficacy if it's not received through one of these authorized channels of disciplic succession. Okay, I'm supposed to. And here I have a quotation from Srila Prabhupada about the four Sampradāyas. And this is from purport in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. The philosophers known as Kevaladvaitavadis generally occupy themselves with hearing the Saranagati Bhashya, a commentary by Shankaracharya, advocating that one impersonally consider oneself the Supreme Lord. Such Mayavad philosophical commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra are simply imaginary. But there are other commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra. The commentary by Srila Ramanujacharya, known as Sri Bhashya, establishes the Vishishtadvaitavad philosophy. Similarly, in the Brahma Sampradāya, Madhvacharya's Purnapragya Bhashya establishes Shuddhadvaitavad. In the Kumāra Sampradāya or Nimbarka Sampradāya, Sri Nimbarka establishes the philosophy of Dvaita-Dvaitavad in the Parijata Sarabha Bhashya. And in the Vishnu Swami Sampradāya or the Rudra Sampradāya, which comes from Lord Shiva, Vishnu Swami has written a commentary called Sarvagya Bhashya, which establishes the Shuddhadvaitavad. A Vaiṣṇava should study the commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra written by the four Sampradāya Acharyas. Interesting note, Here is Srila Prabhupada using the phrase Sampradāya Acharya. This is apparently how he intends his followers to use it. The speculations of clever disciples notwithstanding. A Vaishnava should study the commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra written by the four Sampradāya Acharyas, namely Sri Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, and Nimbarka. For these commentaries are based on the philosophy that the Lord is the master and all living entities are his eternal servants. One interested in studying the Vedanta philosophy properly must study these commentaries, especially if he is a Vaiṣṇava. These commentaries are adored by the Vaishnavas. And then, one more thing on the Vaishnavas generally that many of us may be aware of. We see in Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Navadvip Dham Mahatmya, where Lord Chaitanya is speaking with Sri Nimbarka Acharya. And as part of his discussion, he says, Madhva hoite sar dvaya koreva grahan eka hoy kevala advaita nirashan Krishna Murti Nitya Jani Tahar Sevana Se Dvitiya Sar Jana Mahajana. Oh, great personality. From the Madhva Sampradāya, I will accept two essential principles. So we know this, that Bhaktivinoda points out in the Navadvip Dham Mahatmya, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu pointing out to Sri Nimbarka, that Lord Chaitanya has borrowed, may not be the right word, but appropriated perhaps from each of the Vaiṣṇava Sampradāyas two principles. So from the Madhva Sampradāya, I will accept two essential principles: the refutation of Kevala Advaita, exclusive monism, and service to Krishna's deity form, having accepted this form as eternal. So sometimes by the influence of this Kevala Advaita or Advaita Vedanta philosophy, people tend to see the form of the Lord as a manifestation of matter that we can kind of think of as our approaching the Lord through it, but it's not actually the Lord himself. But we rely on oh, am I getting messages from Dr. Prema? Are you locked again? Can you chat and then say something? Oh, poor enough. There should, Annapurna, there should be audio in Espanol. You may have to check on, click on the little globe icon in your Zoom app and I guess choose Spanish without original audio. Oh, okay, bueno. ¿Está bien? Okay, I'll take that as an okay. So we rely largely on, oh, have to unlock Bhakti Prema again. I don't know how that happened. Okay, so, pardon me, please. Yeah, neither do I. It's a great mystery. This is all a big mystery to me somehow. I don't know how I'm able to do this. Um, okay. So his refutation of the monism of the Shankara school and service to the deity form. These two things we take from Madhvacharya. Then he says, Ramanuja hoite ami loidui sar ananya bhakti bhakta jana sevar. From Ramanuja, I accept exclusive devotion, ananya bhakti, and service to the devotees. Um, Sometimes Swami Tripurari Maharaj likes to remind us our religion is called Vaishnavism. That means we worship the Vaishnavas. As directed by Lord Shiva, as Lord Shiva revealed to Parvati, that service to those things connected to Krishna is even more elevated than serving Krishna directly. And then he says, Vishnu hoite duisar korivasvikar Tvadiya Sarvasva Bhav Ragamargar. From Vishnu Swami, I will accept the sentiment of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, that Bhagavan Sri Krishna alone is my everything. Tvadiya Sarvasva Bhava. And the path of spontaneous devotion, Ragmarg. So these are the wonderful gifts of the Vishnu Swami Sampradāya. And then he says, Toma hoite laba ami dui mahasar ekanta radhika shai gopi bhava. From your Sampradāya, the line of Sri Nimbaditya, I will accept two supremely essential principles: to exclusively take shelter of the lotus feet of Srimati Radhika, ekanta radhika shaya. Oh, looks like I cut something out. And spontaneous devotion. No, I'm sorry. Oh, and Gopi Baba, and worshiping Radha and Krishna in the mood um, of the gopis. So we'll talk a little bit about that um, um, later this morning. Um, and this, the way these verses are organized, provide provides a natural segue or transition to discussing the Kumāra Sampradāya itself. So it's called the Kumāra Sampradāya or the Saranagati Sampradāya because it was established by the Chatusana, the four sanas. I always like this, that seemed to be a little sense of humor even in ancient Sanskrit, that they're called the four sanas because their names all start with sana. So these four brothers, Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumar, known as the four Kumars, these are mental sons of Brahma. They were born from Brahma's mind. And we're probably aware that that he conceived these four personalities. He conceived of them as progenitors, but because in telling any story, there has to be a little bit of drama. The four Kumars resisted, and they absolutely declined to marry and create progeny. Instead, they insisted on staying young boys, like Kumaras, or kind of toddler boys, and completely innocent and completely celibate. And they studied all the Vedas. They were quite learned in the Vedas, and they were later instructed by Hamsavatar. Now, the Hamsavatar appeared in response to the Kumara's approach to Brahma about with questions about how we can, the conditioned souls can become freed from the clutches of uh, the threefold ropes of Krishna's external energy. And apparently he was a little stumped. So the Lord appeared as Hamsavatar and gave the Kumaras some instruction. Oh, also, before we get there, speaking of drama, we also know that the four Kumaras caused a little fuss, even in Vaikuntha. Um, these are souls who are completely free, and they decided one day to visit Vaikuntha Loka, but as we know, they were stopped by Jaya and Vijaya, a couple of the guards at the inner gate um, to this particular Vaikuntha Loka. And they challenged him. They said, well, we don't let anybody, no one gets in here but devotees. So, we have to refuse you entrance. And the Kumaras became a little miffed. And in a sense, there was a little fault on both sides. But the Kumaras became a little miffed and they cursed Jai and Vijay. The Lord intervened, um, personally took responsibility for any misbehavior on the part of his devotees. I think this is a wonderful lesson right there that, um, when there was this fuss, this disagreement between the four Kumaras and the guardians of Vaikuntha, the Lord personally took responsibility for any mistake by his devotees, Jaya and Vijay. He didn't, say, well, look, it's their karma or anything like that. But he stepped in, intervened, and and arranged to mitigate the curse. And we may note from the seventh canto of the Bhagavatam, very beginning of the seventh canto of the Bhagavatam, when we're being set up for the appearance of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, especially Hiranyakashipu, so that we can hear the um, Leela between Nrsimha and Prahlad, that this is among the very rare instances simply for carrying out Leela, in which a resident of the spiritual world may come to the material world. So the Kumaras were at the middle of this whole fuss. So they were part of the uh, original cause for Lord Nrsimha, for Hiranyakashipu's tormenting his devotee son Prahlad, and for the appearance of Lord Nrsimhadev to protect his devotee. So when Hamsavatar appeared, the Kumaras, quite innocently, perhaps, at least naively, I would say, asked, when they saw Hamsavatar, when they saw the Lord apparently in the form of a swan, they asked, oh, who are you? So he responded rather pointedly to their perhaps naive question. And so he said, if by asking me, who are you, you were referring to the material body, I must point out that all material bodies are constituted of 5 elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Thus, you should have asked, who are you 5? If you consider that all material bodies are ultimately one, being constituted essentially of the same elements, then your question is still meaningless, because there would be no deep purpose in distinguishing one body from another. Thus, it appears that in asking my identity, you're merely speaking words without any real meaning or purpose. Within this world, he says, so he kind of dismisses the question as not being terribly essential, kind of missing the point. And so then he said, next, within this world, whatever is perceived by the mind, speech, eyes, or senses is me alone and nothing besides me. All of you, please understand this by a straightforward analysis of the facts. So this is the Hamsavatar's preface to his teachings to the four Kumāras. And he teaches them essentially, of course, Bhakti Yoga. And as we see in the second verse, text 24 here in the 13th chapter of the 11th canto, he says essentially the same thing that he tells Brahma at the very beginning of the universe. Everything that you experience, everything that you can imagine, that's all me, the personality of Godhead. And whatever you can conceive of as being separate from me, please understand clearly, that's my external energy. That's my illusory energy that's meant simply for bewildering people. That if we want to see things straight, we have to see through this particular lens. That in a sense, everything is Krishna. However, it's Krishna in the sense that everything that we experience is Krishna's energy, and Krishna's non-different from his different energies. So I just wanted to share this, not miss this is the Hamsa Sampradāya connection. This is why the Sampradāya is sometimes called the Hamsa Sampradāya. And the Kumāras are also, of course, younger brothers of Narada Muni. Narada Muni is a son of Brahma. I'm sorry. No, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I got that mixed up. They're older brothers to Narada Muni. Narada Muni is also a son of Brahma. And he accepted the four Kumāras as guru. So we see Narada Muni essentially at the head of all the Vaiṣṇava Sampradāyas. He seems to have taken initiation in and given initiation to members of all four of the Sampradāyas. So here he appears as a younger brother to the Chatusana, to the four sanas, and accepts instruction and initiation from them. And then sometime later, Narada Muni encounters this personality named Nimbarka or Nimbaditya. And he had another name which I meant to include and forgot, and it has since slipped my mind. But anyway, Nimbarka, the time of his appearance is a very controversial topic. The academics, the modern academics, place him some in based on which evidence they give prominence to. They some place him in the 7th century of the Common Era, others in the 12th or 13th century of the Common Era. Traditionally, Nimbarka is accepted by his followers as having appeared around the time of Janamejai. So, around the time of the grandsons of Krishna and the Pandavas. So that would be about 5,000 years ago, a little less than 5,000 years ago. Whichever we accept, the devotees are perhaps naturally more inclined to accept the traditional version, although thoughtful devotees may also find a way to accommodate somehow one or more even of the more modern versions, especially those of us informed by the broad-minded perspectives of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We see in his Sri Krishna Samhita, he suggests that there's a traditional timeline, a traditional history, and certain personalities appeared at certain times according to the ancient scriptures. But historically, it seemed at least 100, whatever that was, 150 years or so ago, that that they may have appeared at different times. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur points out that the historicity, or the empirically established timeline for the appearance of certain personalities or the occurrence of certain events, as given in the history, especially of the Indian subcontinent or the universe through the lens of the Shastras, is less important than understanding that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that everyone is his eternal servant. The devotees also accept that Nimbarka was considered to be, by many of his followers, to be a manifestation of the Sudarshan Chakra, so that he was not at all, from that perspective, an ordinary human being. The Nimbarka Sampradāya, the Kumāra Sampradāya, has 5 essential practices that comprise their sadhana as they understand it. So that would be karma, vidya, dhyana, prapatti, and guru pasatti. So the karma is, ritual action that's performed in conjunction as part of varnashram dharma, and it needs to be engaged in mindfully with its purpose and always kept at the center, attaining shelter at the feet of Radha and Krishna. It's and this is something that we engage in according to our adhikar, based on varna and ashram, the phases of life and the stations of life, which we have found through our guna and karma, our personal qualities and the kinds of work we're meant to do. And this is a part of the means for salvation, but it's not completely independent of the others. Also, vidya isn't, it's not subordinate to karma, but it's also not as an independent means of attaining salvation. But it's meant for those, again, according to their adhikar, those who are inclined to months and years of scriptural study and meditation and reflection. Then they can engage in the culture of jnana or vidya, knowledge of the scriptures. Meditation, the same for meditation. It's not an independent means for salvation for everybody, but it's for those who are qualified to do it. And that would particularly be the upper castes, those with the yogyopavitam, the sacred thread, and they can incorporate this into their sadhana. Now, prapatti is something that we will see in all the sampradayas. I gave a seminar over 2-3 months, I think 3 months, exploring saranagati, which is the same as prapatti or sharanapati. taking shelter of the Lord. And for the Kumāra Sampradāya, for the followers of Nimbarka, this means surrendering to the Supreme Lord as Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. So, and this is really kind of the crown jewel, the focus of their sadhana. They conceive of the absolute truth ultimately as being Radha and Krishna. There is a distinction that between their approaching Radha and Krishna and the Gaudiyas' approach of Radha and Krishna, in that they accept Radha and Krishna in a swakiya relationship, in a married relationship. And I think I noted in, perhaps it was in Padmanabha Maharaj's talk yesterday, that there is a sense in which this swakiya is there in tattva, even in our sampradaya, but in bhava, the Radharani and the gopis relate to Krishna in a parakiya way, because it adds excitement, it adds flavor, adds spice to the relationship, to all the relationships, actually, to all the relationships in Braja. Because although everybody wants their daughters to marry Krishna, they end up having to marry their daughters to someone else, and then they go hang out with Krishna in the middle of the night, which just turns the whole village upside down. So, and this is I think this might be something that I got from Wikipedia, and that I didn't have time to explore in greater depth. But it seems to be it's a kind of regulative service with the highest devotion characterized by Madhurya Ras. They apparently have a different, I don't have any experience of the Nimbarka Sampradaya, but apparently they also have a different Mahamantra, that instead of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, they chant Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Sham, Radhe Radhe. Just a little different flavor. Nobody would dispute the sweetness of that. And then the fifth aspect of their sadhana is Guru Pasati, or taking shelter of Krishna through the Guru. And as we might suspect, whether Nimbarka Acharya appeared in the 13th or 14th century of the Common Era, or the 7th century of the Common Era, or the 3rd century, or the 3rd millennium before the Common Era, as is traditionally considered, there will be a number of lineages that have developed coming from Nimbarka Acharya. Although there is, I forgot to include this, there is a particular Acharya who is considered to be in at least, I guess, the most authorized representative of the common expression, of the contemporary expression of the Nimbarka Sampradaya. They're quite active. We see, there apparently there are many Nimbarka temples around Vrindavan. Nimbarkacharya, the place of his, along with the time of his appearance, the place of his appearances also seems to be under some dispute. He sometimes is referred to by the academics, the contemporary academics, our contemporary academics, as a Telugu Brahmin, so he'd be a South Indian um, from, I think, Karnataka or someplace like that. The traditional perspective on Nimbarkacharya is that he was born in Maharashtra, and that when he was young, his parents, his father was a rishi, I can't remember his name, and his mother, very saintly personality, that they moved to Brajamandala in his youth and lived somewhere between Barshana and Govardhan. And so, it's kind of interesting to try to understand that. Now, the essence, these things don't constitute the essence of Nimbarka Acharya's appearance among us. The essence is the teaching that he has given. So we can go back. So from this line, we get our Gopi Bhava and taking exclusive shelter of Sri Radha. And that's something that the Gaudiya Vaishnavas particularly can appreciate, because as we hear often from our teachers in our Sangha, there are through Lord Chaitanya, especially two primary windows of opportunity for approaching the Lord for attaining Braja Prem. And one is Madhura or Sringara Rati. And for us, that's generally Manjari Bhava, a form of Radha Dasyam. And the other is Sakya Bhava. So, and among the Sakyas, among the Sakas, you have the Priyanarma Sakas who see themselves also in Radha Dasyam. They're servants both of Radha and Krishna. And they have a very special position. But all the, from the Gaudiya perspective, all the residents of Vrindavan, they're all about, their service is all about enhancing the pastimes between Radha and Krishna. Even Mother Yashoda wants Krishna to get a good night's rest so he can grow up to be big and strong, and the gopis want Krishna to sneak out at night to be with them. So there's always this tension, there's always some drama in Braja, and that's all for facilitating especially the devotees' love for Krishna and Krishna's love for the devotees, but especially the relationship between Radha and Krishna. So back to where we were. I think I might be at the end of the presentation. Oh yes, here we certainly are. So I've ended uncharacteristically early, for which I hope everyone is a little grateful and will bless me. So there's time for some discussion, and so I need to go in and do more mudras and nyasas. Participants, where's that window? That's, okay. This had to happen, that I would get completely lost. Ah, here we go. Okay, so now you should be able to unmute yourself if you have any comments or reflections or questions. Oh, Vaiṣṇava Maharaj is here. Dandavats. Well, I assume that means that there are not further questions. I don't see anything coming up in the chat again.
Good morning, Maharaj. Can I ask you something?
Always, Kanaram.
Okay, so I have two questions. I guess one is a question and maybe one is more of a comment. But so while I was listening to you today, I realized I'd never really thought about it very deeply. But I'm assuming that the name neem bark is not an English name, like Bhakti Bringa Govinda. It's kind of like an English name, neem bark. Does it mean something else besides how it sounds?
Actually, his original name had something to do with neem trees. It's neem something or other. But I believe by Narada Muni, he was given the name Nimbarka, which indicates the sun among the neem trees, something to do with that. So Nimba and Arka together, the Nimba tree and the Arka, the sun. So I don't remember, I didn't have time to explore what the significance might be of that. But no, it's not an American name like Kyle or Bill. What was your comment? I miss your questions and comments, Kanarama.
I miss you too, Maharaj. My other thing was, I was just thinking about this idea about the windows of opportunity in Lord Chaitanya's Sampradāya, so to speak, and thinking about how I think it comes in that section going into Lord Krishna's pastimes where Naparai Ham appears and he says, I will appear and make devotees for you. And so maybe that's part of the Madhurya window of opportunity. I was just thinking about that this week.
Yeah. He told Radha and the gopis, it was at least implied that in order to make up for having abused you so terribly, I have to come back and I have to make folks your servants, your devotees. So this would certainly be one way of understanding that Radha Dasyam in Madhura Rati, that Manjari Bhava. Yeah, thank you. Oh, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'll send you some pictures.
I saw some Facebook pictures of you all dancing. I guess Heather had posted them. Heather and Dana.
Yes. And did you see Gauravani?
Oh. How do you not?
We miss you.
Dana makes sure you're going to see Gauravani doing his thing in the middle of it. Clear the floor. Yeah.
Thanks, Maharaj.
Thank you. Is there anything else before we adjourn? Yes, sir.
There we go. Maharaj?
Okay. I can try.
What do you recommend for us to read if we want some further knowledge and or information? Marge, can you hear me?
Okay, gracias. Okay, gracias. Okay.
I can now, yeah. Ah, oh, wow, that didn't go where I was expecting. Um, I didn't, as I think back, I didn't directly address that um, transformation um, at all, now that I think about it. They were monists. They were not monists in the sense of the Kevala Advaita of Advaita Vedanta, of Shankaracharya's Advaita Vedanta, especially of the Neo-Vedanta that we see nowadays. But they were monists in the sense that that there was it was it was a kind of like the Shuddha Dvaita that's being taught elsewhere, where they saw everything as um, essentially Krishna's energy. They certainly didn't see themselves as Krishnas. So they were self-realized souls. They were Atmaramas, like Shukadev Goswami. And the transformation was actually effected, actually brought about by their visit out of curiosity to Vaikuntha and smelling the incense that had been offered to the Lord and smelling the tulsi leaves on Krishna's lotus, that are on Krishna's lotus feet, that are offered to Krishna's lotus feet. It's actually the fragrance of tulsi and the incense that brought about that transformation. Where do they live now, and what is their humor? If someone, I hadn't thought about that, because that's a really interesting question. I and I don't have an answer for it. I wonder if Vaiṣṇava Maharaj has heard what is their relationship with the Lord, the four Kumāras. Maharaj? We can always count on Annapurna for good questions. Oh, okay, I'll ask him to unmute. Okay, I'm clicking now. Huh. I keep clicking the thing that says ask to unmute and nothing happens. I don't know why. That is terribly frustrating. I was thinking of that. Annapurna, stump the Swamis. She gets the big trophy today. That's an excellent question. And as often happens when I get together with devotees, I get some homework, some tarea. So this is my tarea for this week for this group. I think I have 4 or 5 other homework assignments. We have a nice new devotee here at the temple in Honolulu where I'm staying from Ukraine. She's been practicing for a couple of years and very, very intelligent, serious young woman. And she's always asking questions that end up in homework assignments for me. So here's another one. And I will try to track that down and maybe I can share the results of my research at the beginning of next week's session, since we won't have to do the lengthy overview. Thank you. Thank you for that excellent question. Anything that engages me in hearing and chanting about Krishna is wonderful. Is there anything else? I think that's a long enough pause to indicate that we may be ready to adjourn. So I want to thank you all with gratitude, of course, especially to Padmanabha Maharaj for engaging me like this. And I'm really happy to have all of your company again, Martine, Braja Bhakti, Gaur-Narayan, Kalachandji has already left, Saki, and Krishna Chaitanya, and so many of you who I see when I get on, and from whom I feel so far right now. Thank you all so much. Or Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Chaitanya Sangha Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.